Hello, family and friends. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Reimagine You Lab podcast. It is me, MG, and I just want to thank you for jumping in today. This is always a time where you can come in, you can find out how do we deal with change. And I am excited because I love having new and wonderful people into the lab, and I really love it when we bring somebody back. So I just want to thank you for joining us today. If you have not already, make sure you hit the subscribe button because that's the best way for you to find out when a new episode has dropped. Make sure that you always share the episodes with somebody that you know and you love, a friend, a family member, a colleague, a neighbor. That is what I always tell you to do. So I am glad that you are here. And I am really glad to have my next guest who is with us today, who is the one, the only John Henry Womack. Mr. Womack, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty well.
I love it. I love it. Now, for those who haven't already acquainted themselves with you or may not have seen you the first time that you were here, do you mind? You know how we do. I go beyond the bio. You got to tell them who you are, where you're at, what you do, and how you do it. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, tell them, let them know who you are, sir.
My name is Reverend Dr. John H. Womack, and I'm sitting here in the fair city of Polk City, Florida. And I'm originally a little country boy from the town of Cambridge, Virginia, better known as Lunenburg County, near South Hill, Virginia, sharecropper, and then a gentleman who got married to my wife in 1965, and we have a journey, on a journey that God has set us on, and we're just glad to be here.
Yes, I am so glad that you are here too. As a matter of fact, Pastor Womack, I said, let me hit the record button right now because we were about to jump into a conversation. We were talking about what we were going to talk about today, to talk about how we can prepare and position and plan and all of these things. And you was like, well, MG, before we do that, there's already, let's talk about this, which is witnessing the providence of God. And
Uh-huh.
in that there's already a plan set up. And I said, you know what, let me hit the record button before we jump in because you already know that there's a plan already, not even sometimes, that's already in place. So I said, let me hit the record button before you start talking. So I wanted to just give you the space to answer me on where you wanted to start at. So go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt before I hit the record button.
Okay, in terms of talking about a plan for 2025 and moving on, I wanted to just highlight the situation, the book that I wrote, Witnessing the Providence of God. And what inspired me to write that was in retirement, just sitting back, relaxing, and focusing on how I got and how we got to where we are,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing how we arrived here at this point in life is not about our plan.
Yes.
It's about the plan that God has for us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the reason sometimes our plans are so much delayed and go astray is because we don't recognize that God already has a plan for us. As
Mm-hmm.
he outlined in Jeremiah 29:11.
That's right.
Well, I know I have a plan.
And it's good and
Yeah,
not evil.
that's right. And so the situation is we need to sometime slow down and focus on God's plan rather than our plan.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our plan could be evil. And sometimes our plan could be, I want it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not God's plan, perhaps.
So true.
So we
So
just
true.
have to slow down, focus, and recognize that many times when we start our plan, that it goes the wrong way because it's not God's plan.
Yeah. So you know what? Let's lean into that a little bit, Pastor Womack, because sometimes, we often think about, I've got, I need to pursue a plan, or I need to make a plan. I need to work out a plan. And often we do want to do that on our own.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were, as you were talking about, hey, when I retired, took some time and I started thinking about really this witnessing the providence of God. I started looking, you look back over the course of your life and you were able to identify, as I was reading, the book, and we're going to get into the book a little more, because there were so many things in here where you really kind of outlined, hey, God really had his hand in my life, and the things that you were able to go back and really see his hand divinely orchestrating a number of things that were happening in your life. How do you had a time in retirement to do that reflection? We have a lot of listeners who are still working, still running their businesses, still moving in workspaces and running their families and things like that. How would you say pre-retirement that they can really be able to tune in and dial into, hey, I want to be able to reflect while I'm still in the grind, so to speak, right? So that I can see, because I think sometimes that's where people get off. Hey, I want to really be able to tune into what the providence of God while I'm still in the thick of things. I want to really have my ear tuned up and hear what the Lord is saying to me right now, because sometimes people, we do get off, and we want to be tuned up and listening and seeing God moving in our lives while we're in whatever it is that we're doing. We want to be mindful of what he's saying to us right now, retired or before we retire.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of the problem that we have.
Yeah, it is.
And that is that we don't want to listen.
Mm-hmm.
We got a plan that
To
we
listen.
feel like that we want to accomplish, but we don't find someone, a mentor.
Yes, there
We
we
don't
go.
find somebody with wisdom
Mm-hmm.
that we can talk to, that we will listen to.
Those advisors. Yeah,
You
people
know?
need that.
So I think that's the main problem that we have with our plans and running our business and doing things, is we really need to find someone that we can trust and listen to, because nowadays everybody thinks that they got a new plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God has been around for eternity, forever.
Yeah.
And he said, I have a plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
And to help develop that plan, we need to get someone close to us and talk to them on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Help us understand the plan that we have and where we are in life,
Mm-hmm.
that have a little wisdom that we can listen to.
Yeah.
Now, my most disappointing thing in life at this
Mm-hmm.
point is finding someone who really wants to listen,
Yeah.
who really believe that God allowed us to get to where we are in
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
and want to share that.
Yes.
other people so that they can listen. For
Yeah.
instance, when you start in this book,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things that we need to look at is it talks about I have a testimony,
Yes.
and I give
Mm-hmm.
scriptures testimonies.
Yes.
And God tells us that we should go and testify,
There. Uh-huh.
tell about what He has done in our life.
That's right.
Because when you really look at it, you will understand that it's not about what we have done,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about what God has done.
Right.
And then in doing that, you see in chapter 1, it's titled How I Got Over.
Yes.
Mahalia Jackson sang that song,
Mm-hmm.
Got Over. And we really need to reflect it, even no matter where you are in life. Think about, how did I get here? How I got over.
Yes.
And when you start to think about that, then you focus more on trying to tell a testimony of what has happened to you in life. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can find someone who's much older and give you more testimonies about that will
Mm-hmm.
get further in life and help you to slow down,
Mm-hmm.
focus on what God has for you rather than what you think you have for yourself.
That's right. No, I love that because you know what? I think that's always been a challenge for people, especially I think about myself in my younger days, like we're always trying to prove what we know. Like we're always trying to, hey, I know this and I know that. Like even little kids where, hey, look at what I've learned and this is what I can show you that I know now. And what I learned the older that I've gotten, it's been more about, okay, I know this, and then how does that work? And then I want to learn a little more, and you continuous learning, like they're always saying to you, be coachable, be a continuous learner, because the more that you learn, the better you are, and the more people want to work with you. Like if you're willing to be a continuous learner, the more people are willing to share with you what it is that they know. And even the Bible tells us, in all your getting, get an understanding. Wisdom is that principal thing, and the wisdom you only get from those who know it. They've been around a little bit longer. They've done a little bit more. One of the
Every morning I get up,
uh-huh.
I think about what my dad used to tell me
Yes.
as a teenager. Even though I worked on the farm, it was hard work, but he
Hmm.
thought hard work wouldn't bother you. But I wanted
Hmm.
to play football.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you go out there and play that football, but when you get older, you're going to regret it. And every morning I get up, I regret it. you
Those
know,
aches and pains.
yeah, you know. So that wisdom that I was willing to listen to because it was so much fun and such an enjoyment of being able to play. I
Hmm.
wanted to go on and play pro football, but when we think about that, and I look at so many football players who now are still living with their mom and dad because they can't do nothing for themselves,
Yeah.
you know, then we
Hmm.
got, we got to look at that and say we got to think about the wisdom that people who are telling us about and listen. And
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that this book can get through to some people to
Yeah.
understand that we need to listen to God. We need to listen to the wisdom that God has given other people. But
Hmm.
I'm really hurt by the fact that people don't want to listen today. And then when you tell some of the things that you feel like God is telling you to share, it's like they insulted. And they said this guy don't know nothing, and you from the old school and all those kinds of things they say about us. But we just need to listen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, I think I've learned, and one of the things that I like about this audience, Pastor Womack, you will find is very encouraged by listening and tuning in, and they're here, they're hungry for learning more. And they tune in because they want to get something. They know that they gain something, they gain some insights from tuning in to the show. So here they tune in because they want to learn and they want to hear from people like yourself and the things that you're willing to share. So actually I have a question for you, because you talk a lot about, the whole book is about the providence of God.
Uh-huh.
In chapter 3, you give a biblical example of it's actually, the chapter 3 is called a biblical example of the providence of God, and it really is the Joseph story that you really are reflecting on quite a bit here.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things, I'm just going to read page 7. You talk about, one of the things that you say is, what I found both intriguing and fascinating is that God's providence in a lot of cases shows up and proves out after some kind of bad situation or critical situation in our life. And you refer to the scripture in James 1, 2, and 3 that talks about being happy for trials and tribulations, for it helps us to persevere.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't want to go through the hard things. You know, we really like the good stuff. You know what I mean? Like the good things happen in our lives, and shows up, and it's nice. But a lot of times you don't really know the good stuff unless you have something bad happen. The bad things happen to be able to let you know that, hey, this is good, because it was something bad. Something bad happened. You kind of have to have the good and the bad in order to be able to have those contrasts. And that kind of comes in. Can you share with us an example, maybe something that happened for you that reminds you, of a Joseph example in your own life that you'd like to share, with kind of that bitter and that sweet that has happened, to be for somebody to be able to, as a practical example that you've experienced yourself, to be able to share with somebody as an encouragement, to be able to live out this principle where you've lived out this principle, that they might be able to live out this principle when they have it happen in their lives as well.
Well, if I refer to the Joseph story just a little bit, probably let's do it at the younger age, and let's say Joseph left home not on his own, but was forced by his brothers to leave home and was sold off. Well, I left home not necessarily wanting to leave home, but I left home because I got tired of farming.
Yeah.
And I wanted something different. And in doing so, I had very little knowledge about what else was going on in the world, because I had only been a farmer. And I wasn't as well educated as I wanted to be, because I could only go to school half of the time. So therefore, going into the Navy, there's a lot of things I didn't know. And one of the serious things was I didn't know how to swim. So I had to learn how to swim. But in learning how to swim, I learned after a few days not to fear the water. And I started jumping off of the tower. And I got pulled out by the instructor every night, until finally he jumped in the water with me and showed me how to swim on my back. Now, in terms of James going through difficulties, trials, and tribulation, it was one of those situations where it was very troublesome
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I learn.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the main thing about that is you need to go through something to learn.
Yeah.
See, book education is good,
Mm-hmm.
but book education don't put you through no trials and tribulation.
Right.
They will if you try to follow it to the T. But you gotta really understand that you have to go through trials and tribulations physically before they really sets in to get you a real learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's good about it. But people don't see that as being good. You have
Mm-hmm.
to really struggle and go through some things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for instance, there was time during the late 60s, people don't think that you would need food. But after marriage, I can remember one situation when we didn't have any the food that we needed and didn't have no money.
Yeah.
And I just went to a store nearby that the person didn't even know me, and I asked him, could he let me have a certain amount of food until payday? Oh, no problem, you know? So you go through those struggles and you
Yeah.
learn and you get experience and you learn that there's people in the world who will trust you, that will
Mm-hmm.
help you, but you got to go through some things. God put you through some things for you to really learn what's going on.
Yeah. Sometimes we got to humble ourselves, right? Like we got to ask, like to, hey, it took a level of humility to say, you know what, hey, would you mind
Yeah,
allowing me to have this food for this short time until payday?
yeah,
You know, because I gotta, not only do you have to eat, but you got a wife that you got to care about and make sure that she's eating.
right.
And I don't know if y'all had a family at that time,
No, we didn't.
but but like, hey, I've got to do something because I'm not gonna let my wife and I starve. I've got to do something, you
Mhm.
know, and so I've got to, and those are the things that you have to do. And sometimes we do that, and it takes whatever it's gonna take. I'm willing to do it so that I can make sure that we're taken care of in that time. Um, and God makes sure sometimes we got to take action. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not gonna sit there just sit on the side and not do nothing. Started there. Hey, we're gonna, you know what? I'm gonna ask, and they are willing to take care of us. The Bible says that the Lord sent the prophet down to the river, and the raven fed him.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
But he had to get down to the river.
that's right. Got to get there. Now, there
Yeah.
are some other things. I could go through a lot of stuff in terms of
Mhm.
dealing with this, but trials and tribulations. See, I never had less than two jobs all of my life
Yeah.
after
You
leaving
talked
home
about that.
and
Hmm.
retirement. And most
Yeah.
of the time, it was probably three. And those were struggles and
Hmm.
difficult times. But
Yeah.
that's when you put your head down and you grind and you learn.
Hmm.
You know, uh,
Yeah.
I went on the fire department, and they told me that the only reason I was there because they lowered the scores for me to get there.
Hmm.
But when it comes to driving a truck and doing things, I had all the experience I needed because I was knocking down any telephone pole, driving the tiller,
Hmm.
or I had firefighting experience and training in the Navy
Hmm.
and aboard ship. So I had already had that training.
Hmm.
But the organization that I was with, the city that I was with, the people put you down and you go through the struggle of things that you may or may not know.
Hmm.
just to be where you are and to move forward. So
Yeah.
those are the kinds of difficult things, trials and tribulations you go through. And I
Yeah.
just end up by saying, if you don't go through trials and tribulation, you won't get the experience that you need in life that will carry you through.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's not going to come once in life. It's going to come more over and over again.
Yeah.
And you got to know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And to not have fear, not be afraid, but just trust in God, knowing that He has a plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes I sit back and I think, I say, I could be a lot further in life if I just trusted God as I should have with certain things that He was leading me to do.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, God said, I'm going to take this away from you so that you can see what you missed out on, so that you have a good learning experience and get closer to me.
Yeah. You know what is interesting, Womack, because you said in that instance, they told you they had to lower the scores in order for you to be a firefighter. And when my husband and I were there and visiting you to see all of the many accolades, you are a doctor of theology. You've got your master's degree and your all of these things that you have accomplished. Sometimes you would think in one arena someone would say that to you, and where you may not have had the score. And just like you said, hey, I scored lower on the written part of the exam, but in the physical, driving the trucks, I've already gone through the Navy. Listen, you was in the Navy and couldn't swim. Couldn't swim. So it's just hey, sometimes they heard, I can't pull the quote, but it says something, but it's something to the effect of talent trumps, it's kind of like tenacity trumps the talent, or something where, if you put in that hard work, sometimes that's gonna beat a lot of sometimes that aptitude. And it's something like, I'm gonna find it while we're on this call. But essentially, it's gonna, you put in the hard work, a lot of times that may beat a lot of what sometimes people are going to say is the kind of that book smart that you was talking about. A lot of times you put in that grit, that perseverance, that determination. Sometimes when you are willing to do that, that's going to be sometimes what people think is just talent on the surface a lot of times. So I tell people sometimes you just got to get in the game. You're willing to do what it takes. Sometimes that opens up the doors of opportunity. Sometimes that's just the providence of God, like that it's going to move mountains that you just wouldn't imagine. It's going to open up doors and that you can't open,
Yeah.
So
Here's another situation of the providence of God. I have a devotional book that I read daily, and November the 24th, the heading is A Gratitude Visit. Now, out of that reading, the providence of God showed me that I need to go ahead and write a little book.
Is that right?
On gratitude visit. But in here it says, the one that you want to give this gratitude to, you should write it and let them see it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I looked at, that I'm going to focus back on my life and say thank you to the people who helped me in life.
Oh, yeah.
And gratitude. And one person who's getting older now that I'm probably going to do first, but we need to learn also in terms of how God has blessed us. That's the first one.
Yes.
But on
Yes.
the other hand, God put people into our life that help us. And sometimes we don't necessarily like what they have to say to us,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to find someone that we trust. And when they say things to us that even that we may not like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when we get a little older and get past that, we need to say thank you
Absolutely.
for telling me the
Absolutely.
right thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
even though it hurt me, I thank you now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And sometimes along with that, sometimes those people will say things to us that come in the form of a discouragement
Yeah.
that has been a motivation that caused us to move out on something that they said. They told you that you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They told you that you shouldn't do it,
Yeah.
and you do it anyway,
Yeah.
and you become successful because of what they told you that you couldn't do.
Oh,
And you go back and you tell them thank you also. You know that you grateful that they told you that you couldn't,
yeah.
and that was your fuel to move forward,
Right. That's
and you
right.
did it, and you go back and you thank them too.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And then also there's comes a time in life when some of the things that you wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
that you find out that wasn't the best thing for you to do.
Yes.
And you need to thank God
That you did.
that you didn't do it, you know? And a good example for me for that is I tried starting 4 or 5 different business before I caught on to the janitorial business.
Is
Now,
that right?
yeah, I was doing that part time with other companies and doing it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I had 2 gentlemen in my church who
Uh-huh.
knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me, John, you ought to go ahead and pursue us, because there's a lot of people that's doing well on that. And he took me to Washington, D.C. to see what some other companies were doing,
Mm-hmm.
to the Black Caucus meetings down there.
Yeah.
And when I experienced that, I came back and I started pushing that janitorial thing because that's not what I really wanted to do.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I didn't want to do no janitorial business. I was looking at a steel erector and all those other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But they kept after me about that, and it worked out.
Yeah.
So we ended up being 3 best black business in New
Mm-hmm.
England in the same
Yeah.
church. You know,
Wow.
we helped each other out.
Yeah.
So it's situations like that we got to look at and listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that wasn't my real focus of what I wanted to do. But I could
Yeah.
tell you a lot of stories along those lines. But you
Yeah.
know,
You know what? I'm reading a book right now called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat by a young man by the name of Colin Campbell.
uh,
And it talks about, as you are building your business, like, and sometimes it's pivoting. It is sometimes people stay in some businesses too long. You treat them like a baby and like they're your kids, and some things we really need to move away from it and not treat it like that. When sometimes they end up sucking you down, and you should have done something different. And so it's a lot of key learnings and stuff in it. A lot of it, with even in the conversations that I've had with you, Mr. Womack, it's a lot of things in there that sound like some of the things that I've heard you say and talk about. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just kind of tuning my ears with some of those wisdom nuggets that you've shared. I know I don't want us to run out of time before we gosh, Mr. Womack, I feel like there's so much more. There's so much more. I feel like now we're gonna have to do a part 3.
mhm.
Um, But one other thing I wanted to ask you about, we're definitely going to have to do a Black History episode, because there was a chapter that where you were talking about chapter 14, when you were talking about the providence of God working through African Americans. I think it's a key chapter where you just were talking about, African American people, and who in every case were really ministers of God, who believed deeply in God and God's providence working in them. And many of them gave their lives for whether it was the cause of justice. And you name so many people, the Rosa Parks and Bessie Coleman, Ruby Bridges and Frederick Douglass, Thurgood Marshall, and all of those. And I think about, we always attribute our historical figures, so many of them we love and admire. And I think about people like yourself and the things that you've done to really kind of pave a way, continue. Like even now, I think about you and the work that you've done, the things that coming on to the show, talking to me. I mean, I really enjoyed the time that we spent with you and your wife, and just kind of looking at the history board that you have on your wall at home, just the things that you've done and been able to share. What would you say is the thing that you feel? I know there's probably several, but when you think about over the course of your life from a historical perspective, what are some of the things that you would say are that key, that you feel like you would say are the history making moments? What are the top, you would say, three things that really stand out in your mind as part of, paving the way, that you would say are those top three things that are um, part of your legacy? And there's so many, I'm sure, but that you would say are kind of those moments that when you look back over the course of your life, what would you say are the top three history making moments that you feel like are your legacy?
Well, one of them, probably the top one, would be family, helping
Mhm.
family. And
Yeah.
not only helping family, but family helping me. In the business, it was difficult, but my whole family, wife and children, were involved. But also, there was three brothers, four brothers
Hmm.
that was involved in some
Mm.
phase of the business where a lot of people say it wouldn't work. Sometimes it was difficult, but I couldn't forget about the fact that I need to reach back. That's always been a concern of mine, or something that I wanted to do, was to reach back and help my family. And in doing so, they helped the business to grow to a point that I was able to do a lot for my mom and dad in terms
Mhm.
of buying their first home, who were sharecroppers and never owned a home, to be able to get that. So family was very important in doing this, and I feel like that God blessed us a lot for not losing sight of that, not looking at a situation where it's me, and nobody else,
Yeah.
but to
No, that's good. I love that.
always reach back. Then another part of it that I always wanted to do was to help others, employ people who wanted to start a business. Some of them worked out fairly well, and others did not.
Hmm.
They thought they knew it all before, too quick.
Hmm.
They go out and they fall on their face.
Mm.
Maybe that was part of their learning experience that they had to learn on their own, to
Yeah.
basically that they need to listen a little bit more rather than trying to be in a hurry to say, I want to be like you. They
Yeah.
realized that it took years to do that. There's a situation too when we had the Popeyes franchises that we sent, I believe it was 5, 6 people to Texas for 6 weeks to learn how to operate, and only two went to work when they came back.
Oh,
But
really?
Yeah, but that was a concern. I wanted to help people. And one of the main reasons was I wanted to get 5, 6, 7, 8 Popeyes started and show
Mm-hmm.
them how they could buy them from us and have them on their own.
Yeah.
So that was always my reaching out part of what I wanted to do, but it didn't work too well because, again, people was in a hurry to
Yeah.
be like and not feeling that they had to work for it or go through some trials and tribulations to get where they needed to get. So that's a good part of my reaching out in terms of trying to help other people to grow and to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of doing it, I didn't want people. One of the main things that I accomplished was becoming a pastor. I was so happy that God blessed me to run a business
Yeah.
before I became a pastor.
Yeah. Why so?
Huh?
I said, why so?
Because it showed me how a church needed to be run
Mm-hmm.
in terms of pastoring. See, I often talk about life application,
Mm-hmm.
applying things, scripture and things to our life that we can use from the Bible and not just think that we're going to listen to some preaching or
Yeah.
preaching and it goes in and out,
Got you. Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
but
I love that.
showed me how to run a church. I had the balance of how to deal with people,
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with money.
Yeah.
Because first thing I went to the church, I said, I don't count no money and I don't
Mm-hmm.
no checks.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, that's good stuff, Pastor Womack. I love that. We gonna stop there.
Mhm.
But I know that that's something else. That's something more we can get into. But I know we are out of time. We gonna have to come back. But that's a good nugget to stop on and good to pick back up right there the next time.
Okay.
Pastor Womack, it has been a pleasure. Always good stuff. And we still got more to talk about on this book. And you know what? We just gonna have to do your own show. That's what we're gonna have to do because it's just too much. But audience, I am so glad that you guys got to tune in to hear Reverend Pastor Doctor Emeritus now. Really, he's at emeritus status at this point. But always a pleasure to have you in the lab. And so thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you.
And
Good
you
to
are
be here.
always welcome in this space. So this has been the Reimagine You Lab podcast. I want to thank Pastor Womax for joining us, and he will be back. You guys will hear from him again. This is always just so there's so much in here. I want you to go and check out. This is the Providence of God, Witnessing the Providence of God by John Henry Womack. It will take you through being able to see the providence of God in his life, but it gives you eyes to be able to see and witness the providence of God in your own life. It really talks through where you have see God show up in his life through this book, but it also gives you a very much a template of being able to see it established in your own life. Amazing book, amazing content in there. Is so much for you to be able to dig in. Make sure that you go Amazon.com. You can pick up a copy. Witnessing the Providence of God, John Henry Womack. It's an amazing book. Go and grab it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you guys. Until next week, make sure that you join us. If you have not already subscribed, make sure that you hit the whistle at the bottom of this link. And I look forward to seeing you here next week. Thanks so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you until next time. God bless you.
Okay.